Welcome everyone to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, indexing in a universal life insurance policy. Part 3 in our series on Index Universal Life Insurance, an emerging asset class, with nationally recognized retirement expert and certified financial planner, Chris Jacob. Welcome to the third segment, Chris.
Thanks, Steve. Great to be here.
Okay, it's an emerging class now. We're kind of making a whole new territory for ourselves. We're going to combine now the art of insurance and the tax codes that come with it, the favoredness, the advantages, and we're going to marry that to indexing, in my opinion, the poor man's index. So talk to me about why this, because you were not altogether drinking the Kool-Aid some years back as a certified financial planner.
No, to be quite frank with you, prior to 2012, I was the buy term and invest the difference guy. And it was only until the advent, if you look at one of our other segments where we talk about participating loans, the ability to arbitrage money, borrow money not from but against the policy, that I had the paradigm shift in the way that I think about these things. And when you say drank the Kool-Aid, I sincerely do. I've got a substantial amount of money that goes into one of these every year and have had since 2012.
Well, to set the segment up, I want to just say, remember, we could buy the S&P very cheaply, either through a mutual fund or an ETF. You could even buy options on the S&P. You could buy it in an annuity. You could buy it in a variable universal life contract. They all have their pluses and minuses, but I think the best hybrid of all of them, when you put it together, this Index Universal Life seems to be a kind of a class by itself. I have upside potential. I have zero downside risk, except for whatever the expenses are to the policy. That's what makes it hot. So let's walk through it as an asset class. Now, when I think of asset classes, I've been in the security side for a long time, so I'm thinking of my bond class, my security class of stocks, my mutual funds that are for aggressive growth and growth. I have asset classes that I think about all the time in asset allocation. Where do I put this in an allocation model?
In typical asset class allocation, you have high risk, medium risk, low risk. You also have different types of tax vehicles. You have after tax, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, cash in the bank. You've got tax deferred, as you'll see, we like to call it tax postponed. Okay, or you have tax free, things like Roth, municipal bonds. Okay, very few people have that asset class that you can attribute to it. It's low risk, and it's structured properly, tax free, and that's where this comes into play.
Wow.
Okay, so. But what does everybody hear about Index Universal Life? Hey, wow, it has high fees, it has hidden costs, rates of return are low, and I can't get access to my money. And structured improperly, all of those are true, okay? But let's debunk those myths, if you will, when it is structured properly. Let's take a look at a policy where we're going to allocate, this is on a 45-year-old non-smoker, $20,000 a year, and our minimum non-modified endowment contractor, as we like to say, maximum efficient contracts. It's always some goofy numbers. $438,610. That's the minimum amount of death benefit I can squeeze 20 grand into. And Steve, notice you've got accumulation and surrender value, which for the first 10 years there's a differential between those two, which is the surrender charge. However, thereafter they're the same up until the time we go to start accessing this. Now, you don't have to wait until 65, but in this instance, we said, what level amount could we pull out? Assuming a 6% rate of return on that 0 floor 11 cap, for instance, $63,000. But notice that 63 comes out to us tax-free. But whereas before there was no difference between accum and surrender value, notice now, net of me taking a loan against, not from, what's happening with that accum value that I'm getting credited index on?
It's growing.
It continues to go. Now, the cash value is, what if I walk away? That's what I'm going to walk away, surrender value. And the death benefit, notice how that's going down a little because they're just going to subtract the loans that I've taken from my death benefit when I die. And this shows it going out to 99. It actually goes all the way out to age 120, all right? So graphically, what did I put in? I allocated $400,000. This is truly life insurance. This pays you for living. The IRR, internal rate of return, is actually better the longer you live. I'm going to get $2.2 million. We do this for every client. We put together what we call a wealth report summary where we will compare returns on other asset classes and expenses. So let's compare taxable, tax deferred, tax exempt. Tax deferred meaning like your 401k IRA. 6%, we netted out the cost on the insurance, which we'll get to here shortly, 1% on the others. So various financial alternatives, and Steve Insmark, which if you folks haven't used it, I've been using it since 1987. I say you folks, those for the advisors. One of the best ways I know to compare do it versus don't do it. True?
It is.
So
great point.
what if we got an equity account that's getting 6%? What if you could find tax-free munis at 6%? Good luck. Versus our indexed universal life at 6. Put in the same 20 into each one of those asset classes and go to access the money. And this is where the $63,000 coming against the insurance policy versus the 63 coming from those other asset classes. It's just really not a fair fight. So, you know, I had one client say, well, I can't stand life insurance. I said, do you really dislike life insurance so much you're willing to give up yield for it? Okay. So notice these things all cratered there. We continue to go actually all the way out to age 120.
Now, I want to just stop you there. Now, when you think about this now, when we're talking about it, so this asset class really is a long-term horizon play. This isn't short, mid-term. This is a long-term horizon play. So you got to think in those terms.
Right. It's like the marathon during the Olympics. What do? They focus on the first person who comes running out of the stadium. Is that usually the guy who wins the race? It's the Ethiopian who's been hanging 3 miles back, right? This is your marathon money. You're still going to have your short sprint money, but this is the marathon money that typically is going to win in the long run.
You mentioned something about 4 slides back as well. I noticed, you know, we have taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-free. In your opinion, as a CFP, a certified financial planner, I've heard you talk about it. You need to have diversification in tax as well. Some people are blinded by that sometimes in their 401k, IRA, SEP IRA, because it's all going to be taxable ordinary income, all of it.
So you have 2 risks in those plans. You've got market volatility risk, certainly, but you also have future taxation increase risk, which most people don't think is a risk, but I contend it's a big risk. So what's the differential between money that I was able to generate from the insurance versus these other vehicles? Substantial. So in order to generate the same returns or the same benefits as the insurance at 6%, let's face it, Madoff's in jail. I'm not going to be guaranteed 10.5% anywhere on my equities. And let's hope we never see 8.34% again on tax-free munis, right? So what about in a 30% bracket, if I were to pre-tax fund into a qualified plan, 401k, what have you, I'd be able to put in $28,571. Versus the after-tax going into the insurance. And this is interesting. Notice my cash at the end of year 20 is $1,114,000 in my qualified plan. Cash in the life insurance is only $689,000. When does $689,000 beat $1,114,000? Well, Webster's definition of gross is ugly, and you don't get to spend it. Because who's in this deal with you under the tax-deductible retirement plan, Steve?
No, unfortunately, my uncle.
Your favorite uncle, right? So in order to, if tax rates stay the same, in order to net 63, you have to pre-tax pull 90 in order to generate that same income, which means, as a matter of course, might have started off with more. You're going to wind up with nothing.
Let's just talk about this because I think sometimes we lose sight of this. I'm going to start generating my income. I have $1 million, and I've heard you talk about this publicly. I have $1 million in my 401k. And I'm starting to think in terms of how much will that generate in an income? And you said, well, first of all, I got to pay Uncle Sam back. And I think everybody forgets we have taxes to pay on this.
No, I love it when people tell me they don't owe anybody anything. Everything's completely, they're free of any debt. I say, how much do you have in your IRA 401k? I got $1 million. Great, that's what your statement says. Let me tell you what it should read. $600,000 is your share, $400,000 is Uncle's shares. Now, what's your exit strategy on that money? Which, by the way, we're going to cover that in another segment.
Sure, you bet.
So there's the difference, about almost $1 million between money in my pocket after tax. So when we look at, on this report, values at age 85, what's the total benefit to my family between income and death benefit? What age did I run out of money? Never here, 76, 81 on the others, and we'll drill down on these fees and taxes here in a minute. So those all ran out of money. That didn't. And when I go to our chart, all right, as far as fees and expenses go, yes, without a doubt, higher in the early years for the insurance versus those other investment classes. But let's talk about when you go to start taking the money out. Now, which one's lowest? $1,800 for the insurance, 14 between taxes on the taxable account, and 36 grand. So right when I need the money the most, the expenses are the highest.
And by the way, a little side note just for all our consumers, because you guys know I watch this stuff like a hawk. If you're into mutual funds right now, the average crossover in a horizon plan like this is somewhere between 11 and 12 years, where the Index Universal Life will outperform from a strictly fee outlay. When you use ETFs, it's a little longer, probably about 13 years, somewhere in that. But once you get past 13 years, off to the races. And most people that manage these contracts like I do, by the time we hit distribution, we should be paying about a point, maybe a point and a quarter, all in. That's the cost of insurance, our ability to take the money out. That's what's the art of this. If you're thinking long-term like I am, the fees we could overcome. If you say, Steve, I'm going to only be in 10 years, then yes, don't do this.
No, I won't let you do it.
Right. Right.
We won't let you do it. So let's see. By 85, Steve, truly, which one, quote, cost the least? Mm-hmm. Well, without a doubt, the Indexed Universal Life, the expenses on it were less. Mm-hmm. The one that everybody tells you to put your money in, tax deferred, which is tax deductible, tax deferred. Look at, you put in 571 pre-tax, what was your total expenses and taxes? Mm-hmm. Basically 100%. And look at the ages on which those things went to zero. That never did. Mm-hmm. So, when you look at the truth about IUL, when funded properly, really over the long run has low fees, fully disclosed costs, which we will run a report for everybody on their own personal situation. And returns over the long run are competitive, and you are able to access that money. You got liquidity, use, and control even prior to 59.5, which you don't have in a qualified plan.
Just to close out the segment, I just saw a case where we looked at the 408B2 compliant expense loads in a qualified plan. So I looked at all the expense loads in the plan, and the client's been in it for 17 years. He's going to be in it for till he's another 25. Well, actually, 25. That'll be about another 8 years. He'll be in the plan itself. He will have spent $109,000 all in total 408B2 administration costs, expense ratio, RIA fees, statement of additional information, and cash drag, just to name a few things. Over 6 figures of expense loads.
It's not what you make, it's what you keep.
Right. Well, don't forget to watch our next segment on the distribution debate between qualified and non-qualified plans. Part 4 of our series on Index Universal Life, an emerging asset class. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.